if things go the way that Democrats want them to. Help us understand what that would mean for President Donald Trump. What are the Democrats going to be able to do to make his job more difficult?
Yeah, able to do or able not to do, as the case may be. Let's start with the able to do part, because it's perhaps easier. Remember, 2 chambers of Congress, and in the House at least, which at least, you know, from the narrative at this hour, looks like the more likely prospect, if the Democrats are going to win control of any House, far more likely it would be the House. What would that mean? Well, it would mean, and first of all, the margin is also important. Is it just a few seat pickup? Is it just going to be near that plus 23 net gain that gives them a majority and they just squeak it out by a few inches? Or will it be a more substantial majority in the House, and a majority perhaps of Democrats who are more or less moderate or more left or more right-leaning? That's also going to be important. But it gives them control, the first dibs at control of the big committees in the House, the so-called oversight committees. There's one, the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, which you could call in shorthand the Investigative Committee, and that's the one that could launch investigations on any number of matters. It could be an investigation against conflicts of interests. It could be reinvestigating Russia ties, alleged Russia ties. It could be tax, fiscal schemes, Trump's tax schemes, trying to force him to release his tax returns. All sorts of investigations that perhaps could be construed as things where Donald Trump is perceived or alleged to have perhaps had a conflict of interest or done something a little amiss. And then there's the Intelligence Committee also. The control of the Intelligence Committee also gives the Democrats, would give them a big upper hand over a lot of oversight, especially, as you can imagine, with respect to things like North Korea, with respect to Iran, with respect to Russia, obviously. It won't give them, this is what it will not give them. Let's assume that the Senate at this hour, and it's probably not going out on a limb, the Senate's not likely to fall into Democratic hands, which would mean it would remain in Republican control. But even if it were to fall into Democratic hands, you would need a 2/3 majority of senators, basically, to say override, in order to pass a lot of these vetoes against Donald Trump, so to speak. The Democrats will not have the control of the Senate that you need, say, for judicial nominees, for Supreme Court, future Supreme Court nominees. Donald Trump obviously has already been able to appoint 2 Supreme Court nominees, including most recently a very controversial one, as we saw, who got through on a razor-thin margin that bitterly in a partisan way divided the Senate right down the middle in a very close vote. And if they were to retain control, they would be able, presumably, to continue to push through candidates in Donald Trump's to his liking, in his vein, without putting up much resistance.
Which is something that has far-reaching implications beyond the office of the presidency, since these are lifetime appointments,
which obviously, as we say whenever we talk about the Supreme Court, which influence the overall tenor and the future direction on all the social issues in the country, but also issues from gun rights to abortion to gay marriage. A lot of decisions where you could sort of have cases that come up before the court, which give the court a chance to perhaps backtrack. One of the things they're talking about now is still Roe versus Wade, the landmark 1973 abortion rights decision. Will there be a case that comes before a more conservative majority of this court, as it is already a more conservative majority, 5-4, if it's say 7-3 or something down the road in the future, and a case comes up before the court of that tenor? This would obviously have massive consequences, having a Senate more firmly in Republican control, because I will add that there's a possibility tonight that the Republicans could even pick up a seat or 2 in the Senate.
Definitely something the Democrats would want to have more control over.
But keep your eye on the governorships as well, because we can't forget that there are 36 governorships up for grabs right now. Yeah. Republicans hold 33 of those. Democrats just 16 at the moment, and it's a massive issue.